warm welcome to an exclusive episode of the Monday Morning Learning Podcast. Very good afternoon to you, Pradnya. Trust you're doing great. Please share any welcome words before I start off with your introduction to the audience.
Oh, yes, I am very, very happy to be here. So thank you for having me. And I've known you for a long time, but it's been almost a decade that we haven't connected. And so really happy to be part of this journey and share what I can share and maybe learn in the process as well. So absolutely excited about this.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pradnya. So for the audience, a quick introduction, Pradnya. First of all, very happy to introduce you. Pradnya is the principal for strategy and operations at Telstra India, leading their Pune and Hyderabad offices. With over 25 years of experience across global organizations like Western Union, UBS, ANZ, HSBC, Tech Mahindra, and KPIT, Pradnya has shaped change, culture transformation, and leadership development at scale. Pradnya is also known as a strong champion for diversity, equity, and inclusion, actively mentoring women in their careers, writing, and contributing at forums like NASSCOM and GHCI. Beyond her corporate leadership, she has devoted time to social impact projects, including Sandipurna, which help people from undeserved communities find employment and opportunities as such. So, Pradnya, it's a privilege to have you join us today. For the audience, we're looking at 5 themes today. We're going to start off with Pradnya's leadership evolution and personal philosophy, a couple of questions there. Then we'll move to emotional intelligence and inner transformation, then systemic and regenerative practices in organizations, people culture in a changing world, and finally, we'll look at legacy, mentoring, and future of work. So, Pradnya, starting off with the first one, couple of questions around what personal values and turning points have shaped your leadership philosophy over the years, and the second one being how do you balance authenticity and adaptability when working with diverse leaders and contexts?
Yeah, sure. When I think of what's shaped my leadership philosophy, I think it really starts at home. Growing up in a very middle class family, my dad was in railways, my mom was stay at home. So hard work and commitment were not just values, I think it was daily habit for us. But if I were to speak from a corporate setup perspective, for me, it's never really been about the title. It's really how you show up for people. And I kind of think of it like being a gardener, and I am an urban gardener, just so you know. You don't really force the growth, but you kind of create the conditions and then give whatever support that's required by the people and let them just flourish at their own timeline. That kind of has stayed with me through my life and career. Likewise, growing up, my dad used to tell us mythological stories in Chittaranjan, which was the biggest locomotive in India. That's where my dad worked. And there was a lot of load shedding that used to happen there. And so when there were no electricity, what do? You go out and sit in the veranda, and my dad would tell us stories. So these were lessons in morality, people-centric thinking. And I think early on, those kind of influenced me, made me realize that leadership is as much about the character as much it is about the results that you bring. For me, a turning point was, and you mentioned in my introduction, when we came back to India from US, I started off working with an NGO, and just seeing how much diversity people had to face, and how we often took things for granted, it changed my perspective completely. I think it started teaching me how to appreciate really, really small things in life. And that whole sense of pay it forward, that became my mantra. And then we worked together in HSBC, which was my first role in a multinational bank. Just imagine 70 countries, 350,000 employees. The scale at which we operated was absolutely mind-boggling. No? And I had to quickly learn how to connect across cultures, time zones, most often virtually. And that kind of taught me adaptability and authenticity, that they aren't optional, they're essential. So in today's world, I feel like knowing your first principles, that's crucial. Like some of the great athletes, who adapt their game, but they don't lose their core technique. So on similar lines, I think leaders, they have to stay true to their own values, but they must keep flexing their muscles to new realities. Couple other things that come to mind is, I think, emotional intelligence and mindfulness. To me, They're kind of non-negotiables. We are in the people business, no, after all, and you can't lead effectively if you don't listen deeply or genuinely empathize. So those are a few things I think that kind of shaped my leadership philosophy. And then you asked me about balancing authenticity and adaptability.
Yeah.
I think of authenticity as like my skeleton. It gives me a structure. And adaptability is like the muscles, the joints that kind of let you move around without falling over. So without both, you are either very rigid or doing some very awkward stretches trying to fit in. So again, back to my cricket analogy, Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, they have very strong batting foundations, as you know. But you've seen how they adapt themselves depending on whether they're playing a test match or a T20. So it's something like that. Your core stays the same, but how you really execute the changes depending on the context. So the foundation has to be your first principles, as I said, that really define you. Everything else is about adaptation. Uh, and I think when you're talking with diverse leaders, when you're working with really, really diverse leadership team and members from different cultures, you kind of quickly realize that everyone brings a very unique style to the table. And the key is to align with those styles. So you're all kind of rowing in the same direction, even if your approaches may be slightly different. So ultimately, authenticity, it's not just being rigid, it's being very clear on what you stand for while staying flexible enough to adapt to some of the new contexts, people. And that's really how you even build trust or drive results across these environments. So those are some of my thoughts.
Perfect. Perfect start, Pradnya. Thank you. So you touched upon the emotional intelligence and inner transformation parts. A couple of questions are what role has EI and mindfulness played in your journey as a leader? And kind
Oh.
of that moment or moments when inner growth directly influenced the outcome of a high stakes business decision as such.
Yeah. There are a few leaders I follow and few authors that I follow, and one of them is Daniel Coleman. And I think, if I recollect right, he had said, if your emotional abilities aren't in hand, if you don't have self awareness, if you don't know how to manage your emotions, and if you can't have empathy and build effective relationships, then no matter how smart you are, you're not going to get very far. And I think I learned it the hard way in my first leadership role. I would kind of carry everybody's problems on my shoulders, pretty frustrated over even small details, kind of trying to solve every problem for people, even if they wouldn't ask me for it. And for the longest time, I think delegation was an absolute nightmare for me. I always thought that if I'm handing things over, which means I'm kind of letting people down. But what I didn't realize that it's actually me getting in my way of others doing the best work they could. So emotional intelligence, I think I've come to realize, isn't about doing more. It's about knowing when to step back, kind of listen, and trust that others will do a good job. So that was a hard lesson for me. Likewise, mindfulness, I think it has taught me just the art of switching between macro and micro. It's literally like seeing the forest and the trees, sometimes all before breakfast. Being present in the moment, I think it's as important as having a vision for future. One shows you where to go, but I think the other one keeps you from tripping over your own feet on the way there. Our brain, it processes almost 11 million pieces, and I do a lot of leadership training, and I gather all of these insights and data points to share during those. So I remember once when I was reading through, imagine 11 million pieces of information every second, but we are only conscious of about 40 of them. So literally 90% of the time, our shortcuts, our unconscious biases, they are shaping our decisions far more than the strategy slides that we keep presenting. Who we think looks confident, who we trust quickly, who we assume really belongs in this place. That's where the intellectual curiosity comes in. But when you stay curious, instead of rushing to react, I think you find the answers in the most unexpected places. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is actually sitting with the best idea. And if only you're listening closely enough, you'll hear them.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Um, can you share any moments where inner growth directly influenced the outcome of a high business take decision and such?
Yeah, and again, I'm going to quote one of the other leaders I follow, Simon Sinek, and he says, "Hearing is listening to what is said, but listening is hearing to what isn't said." So I'll take you back to a time when I was working with a large financial institution in US, a place where high stake decisions were as common as strong coffee and even stronger opinions. So I was handed this Herculean task of designing an organization-wide listening strategy. Now imagine the world brimming with echo chambers and metaphorical earplugs. This wasn't a small feat for me. So what really made the difference was not just the technical know-how or all those snazzy PowerPoints. I think it was my own inner evolution. So, from simply hearing what people had to say to truly listening, there's a world of difference between the two. Hearing is so passive, but listening is an act of leadership. It's a conscious choice to tune in rather than tune out. So, my inner growth, I think it was my shift from this hearing to listening. And that became the secret sauce for me. It really allowed me to kind of cut through the noise, understand what really mattered to our people. And then I was able to design a strategy that resonated with most of the organization folks. And the result, we just didn't do a tick in the box. Huh? We literally built a culture where every voice mattered, and every month we ran this listening strategy. So yeah, sometimes the most high stakes decisions hinge not on what's said in the boardroom, but really on what's truly heard. And that starts for me with inner transformation. After all, we are in the business to it pays to listen twice as much as you speak, no?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Pregna. So moving to the third theme on systemic and regenerative practices in organizations, couple of questions are on how do these regenerative practices go beyond sustainability to reshape organizations for long-term impact? And could you share example or examples where systemic thinking helped resolve complex organizational challenges and such?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think these regenerative practices, they do go beyond sustainability, and by reviving all our resourcefulness and circularity that our forefathers lived by. No, we had hand-me-downs, reusing, exchanging goods. These were all daily rituals. I remember when my parents used to go out in the evening for a walk to buy some vegetables and groceries, they would always have their bag with them, no carrying plastic bags. So these were absolute daily habits. And this was economic choices, not just act of renewal. It was just done. And I think very similar, collecting seeds so that we could replant. I do that every day. I'm sure most people do that. Or just simply conserving water. These were all, I think, woven into life. It kind of showed that regeneration is really about creating value from what already exists. And you can turn limitations into opportunities, believe you me. So for organization that adopt this regeneration, it means building these principles into their culture, not just maintain resources, but kind of actively renew them, foster resilience, and just adaptability from a long-term impact perspective. That's how I was looking at it. I'll share an example where I think systemic thinking was really crucial. And this is really, really 2005 when I was working with one of the IT organizations. The H-1B fees were drastically increased. And I just realized we've had that happen recently with Trump's announcement as well. And you know what happens? This sudden revision. And at that time, I remember it was some 195K it was brought up to from 65K. Twice, and it created a obviously significant impact to us as business. Most of the IT organizations at that time, they used to send your resources to US, right? And people used to join also because they would get that opportunity. So instead of kind of reacting in silos, we took a step back to see the larger picture. How has this change affected not just our on-site teams, but the entire organization's operating model? And that led to an org-wide reevaluation of our approach itself to on-site work. We questioned some long held assumptions by people that critical work has to be done in the US at that time, who needed to be really present on site. And as a result, I think we started building more competency levels in India. We started investing in upskilling here. We started empowering the local teams a little bit more on some of the complex roles. So this was one example I could think of, that we reviewed the whole challenge systemically rather than just trying to solve the immediate visa issue that we had at that time. We literally transformed our whole talent strategy, and we kind of made the organization more resilient for the future.
Perfect. Thank you, Pradnya. Coming to the people and culture segment, what are the biggest challenges, according to you, that organizations face today in building inclusive, high-performance teams and
Yes.
performing teams, rather? And how do you see the role of HR and people leaders evolving in the age of AI, analytics, and disruption?
Yeah, I knew there has to be a question on AI. That's the buzzing word right now. I do theater. Not sure if you're aware, and so I was just thinking on this. And for me, building inclusive or high performing teams today almost feels like directing a play. You've got actors, you've got the writers, you've got the cinematographers, sound engineers, stage managers, and kind of each one brings with them their own style, their own pace, their own perspectives. Some improvise, some just follow the script to the letter. So the challenge is not just getting everyone to perform their role, but also making sure that these differences, they kind of come together to tell one coherent story. And that's harder in today's world than it used to be. And I think with slow deglobalization, the current cultural nuances that we have, they carry a far greater weight. And then you add the whole hybrid work culture to that. Teams are scattered all across time zones, across screens, across offices. So therefore, effective communication, I think, becomes critical but tricky also. If left unchecked, it can literally create silos or there's room for misunderstandings. Um, I think AI is a major disruptor. Huh? So it brings efficiency, no doubt about that. But it demands new skills. It demands a new mindset to ensure that everyone's feeling included and empowered. So I feel ultimately success depends on each organization's ability to kind of quickly foster genuine connections across the diverse backgrounds, and then use technology without losing the human touch, is what I would say. And then HR's HR's role and people leaders, you said, right? As the we are evolving in the age of AI, analytics, or disruptions. I know people keep saying that AI is very smart, but really it's only as smart as the questions we ask them, no? And the data that we feed. And since the data comes from us, it carries all our blind spots as well, the shortcuts and unconscious biases, right? So again, left unchecked, AI doesn't just reflect those biases. I think it amplifies them. Some even think that AI and analytics will make HR redundant, and I've been hearing about this discussion. Lots of chat rooms and stuff. I think it's far from it. The algorithms can certainly crunch numbers, and it can, of course, predict trends faster than we ever will. But they can't pause. They can't reflect. They can't choose differently. And I think that's why people leaders matter more than ever now. Our role isn't to compete with those machines, it's to shape our workforce around them.
Well,
Uh, yeah, and skill and mindset uplift, I think that's really the heart of the evolution. It's not just enough to focus on the technical skills. We need to foster adaptability, curiosity, resilience. These are all things that people can thrive amid all this rapid change. So if AI is smart, I think people leaders have to be smarter, not at processing data, but at understanding people, really connecting the dots, guiding these people through the change. And I think that's how we make our workforce more resilient, inclusive, future ready, all of that. Machines are smart, no doubt, but humans are smarter. And asking the right question and making humane choices, I think that's irreplaceable to my mind.
I think one thing which pops in my head is now these chat GPT kind of tools which are coming in nowadays, and a reflection with respect to how we evolved in terms of how our learning was while we were young, comparatively to our own children. And this question popped up in a recent podcast when Shivai was asking Pankaj Rai that his daughter is around I think 12th or first year degree, and she has to submit a lot of essays to her teachers, and they keep checking as to whether the content has been generated with ChatGPT or was it actually original. So that's where Shivai was showing the concern ki, should we really use these tools, because we've never had these tools and we learned the hard way using Wren and Martin and the kind of grammar, making mistakes and learning. Now they
Right.
start making mistakes. So what's the kind of view with respect to children and ChatGPT kind of tools as such?
It's a boon and a bane, I would say. It stops you from all the three things that I said: pause, reflect, frame your own mindset. So you kind of, everyone is going to start looking very similar in a few years, because everyone's going to go to that same pool of chat GPTs and co-pilots and others and say, give me an answer for this. So there are two key things I felt. One is, don't lose your uniqueness. Use these tools, leverage them by all means. But what would differentiate is, and something about prompt engineering, that's also the buzzword, and you're being helped on how exactly to frame your questions, precisely what to ask. And just the other day, our new boss shared some of the tips on prompt engineering and said, I would ask something like, what am I not thinking of here? Tell me that has not been thought through already or isn't already available easily. So some kind of tricky questions as these allows the system to then kind of go into a wider search. So I would say do both, balance both, have your own thinking, because that's you, that's what makes you unique. But by all means, leverage all these resources that are available to you now. It just fast tracks, it's so much more efficient. So first get the help, and then use your uniqueness to fine tune it, make it about you more than the generic information. There's information overload today, Ravi, I feel.
Absolutely. I get that. I was talking to one of the CEOs in the US who was also sharing the same thing, very similar to your thoughts. But he said we need to spend at least 1 hour a day on these tools so that they also know us more. And then the kind of, not just the prompts, but the kind of outputs that they actually give
Yeah,
are far better than just using it once in a while.
true. No, I agree completely. And the more data you feed, the more it can read you and try to draw a pattern, no?
So the final theme on legacy, mentoring, and future of work. So what advice would you give to young professionals aspiring to step into strategic leadership roles as such? That's question one. And
Yeah.
looking ahead, what do you want your leadership legacy to be in terms of people, culture, and purposes?
Yeah. This generation, I don't think wants advice, to be honest. They know what they want. But we, and most of us as parents, we have no choice but to have our points ready. And they're always willing to share all the best practices. So I will answer this, but knowing that it may not always work for all. This is from my experience, and this is something that I use with both my girls quite often. And as they are preparing for their corporate journey as well right now, first things I've told them is just be nimble. Literally, in their language, think of yourself as a leadership ninja. You're kind of ready to dodge the curveballs and kind of leap over the obstacles. And bonus points if you can do that without spilling your coffee. The other good skill to have is really read the tea leaves. And I know we get it, but the next generation, these are not actual tea required, but kind of a knack for spotting the trends before they become tomorrow's headlines. And I think it may help you a little bit from those typical I told you so moments. The third key one, and I practice this a lot more now than I used to earlier, is act. Don't just react. So remember, fortune favors the bold, right? We've heard that. But not the ones still looking out for the undo button. Once the bullet is out, it's out. You, no matter how much you regret, you can't take it back. So think and then act. Don't just react quickly. Um, Again, this is a personal philosophy. So for me, it's own the narrative. For me, the buck always stops with me. Anybody who's worked in my team will vouch for this, that I always tell them, no matter whether this is your space or not, if anyone's come to you, the buck has to stop with you. You go and fetch the information, whatever is required, and fulfill that query that has come to you. So if things go sideways, remember, you're also the one who gets to write the plot twist. So it's okay. Come back and see how do I come back to where I needed to go. And the best example always is Google Maps, right? How she keeps offering you, she or he, depending on which voice you use, keeps offering you alternate routes to go where you have to go. So own your narrative. And lastly, lead with authenticity. It's far easier if you're just yourself than if you're taking over a persona, because it's far harder to remember which persona you have taken, why. So just be yourself. And anyways, we know everybody else is taken. So this, and imposter syndrome is so last season. So just be authentic, just be you. That's my 5 things that I would love to tell the next generation if they are listening. And you asked me how would I would like my leadership legacy to be. And I always think about this. One of the exercises we had done in one of the leadership trainings was to write your obituary. And my God, that was the most difficult exercise. You have to literally sit down and think how others view you after you are gone. What would people remember you for? And you have to be very honest about it, right? So I think I want my leadership legacy to be of a change maker, someone who inspires, who drives meaningful transformation, both from a people perspective and from an organization perspective. I've always aimed for razor sharp execution. So for me, strategy is great, but when rubber meets the road, that's when true magic happens. So for me, it's always more about execution and less about strategy. Clarity of thought. I hope people would see me as the person who has been able to always know the why behind the what. And especially in today's really interconnected world, a global mindset is a must have. It's about thinking global, but not forgetting how to align local, understanding the diverse perspectives, but respecting the cultural nuances that you've grown up with. And then use that to build awareness. That's how you will build inclusiveness. That's how you will build resilience in your teams. And the last one for me is just the impact to ripple beyond me. So just how have I empowered others? Have I been able to create a culture that's open, that's adaptive, and there's a sense of purpose that inspires others to kind of push the boundaries? Those are a few I would like to be remembered by. Work in progress.
Thank you. We've got a bit of time, so I want to have your view. Now, it's been going on, but I think especially this year, a lot of senior people have been reaching out to me. Around 30 to 35 years of experience, and unfortunately laid off for different kind of reasons as such.
Yes.
And struggle a lot to actually get to the new identity, because over a period of time, working in 4 or 5 corporates, the entire identity is linked to the brand that you're working on. And I've seen them struggle. I mean, to an extent, we had a lot of discussions, but what is your take? And it's a reality. If you really look at it, a lot of people have had a kind of experience, but they would come to a point where they have to really forgo and then look beyond corporate as such. What would be your advice for such?
Again, I'm no expert in this space, but I have certainly seen a lot of my ex-colleagues, friends, extended family members go through this, and it's very, very tough. For most part of our life, we have made our work kind of central to our life's purpose. And family and other things and ourselves, those have always got a second citizen category. And so those people struggle most when there are two things. You are no more you don't feel valued for what you're bringing onto the table. So far people used to look up to you for your experience, expertise, your direction, your ability to understand and lead the organization. And now suddenly all those things that worked for you so far isn't the need of the hour. And so it's an identity crisis. You start questioning a lot of things in your life, including what am I doing now? What's my worth? So it's very tough when one is going through that journey. But I feel some of this could offer support, and I started preparing myself for that position already. I'm a 50-year-old, but I know it's a matter of time when I will be out of the corporate. So I started theater, acting, all of these things, and I'm gearing myself for it. Health and fitness always remained my priority, but I've started giving it far more importance now and making space for it. I mean, suddenly after 40, 50 years, you decide to do yoga, you're not going to even be able to bend forward, forget about bending backward. So you have to groom yourself, you have to ready yourself. So I've started that. I love gardening. So identify what are you besides the job and the title that you have held all your life. I think this is one I would most certainly implore everyone to think of. You are far more than the job that you've been performing. So use that and leverage that. That's one. And second, again, I've heard a lot of leaders, I've read a few really good authors, and I was thinking, there's Jack Ma had said this, if I recollect well, in one of his podcasts, if I'm not wrong, that every decade you look for something new. So when you reach in that 50 to 60 category, that's the time to do reverse mentoring. That's the time to learn something from a fresh graduate and get a completely different perspective. So you no more see yourself as the person who knows it all and will advise others. You look at yourself as some learning something completely new. So hopefully, when you are again back in that learning zone, you'll start feeling better about yourself, and you might just know a few new things about you. Those are a couple of things that I can think of at the moment.
Absolutely. I mean, since I deal with leaders on a daily basis, I've seen people like Pankaj Rai actually speak to two different people a day. And since last year, when I did this first podcast, he was sharing every Saturday he actually meets a new person. That was last year, and this year I reached
Wow.
that one of my cousin's wife wanted some kind of career advice, so I reached out and saying that why don't you please give her a Saturday in Q2. Then he said, "Oh, din gaye. Abhi it is two people per day. Morning from home to office in the cab for 45 minutes, and evening from office to home 45 minutes. Two new people later. So 60 people.
What a brilliant thing to do.
Triggered when you actually said that, when you speak to these youngsters as such, right, new ideas actually generate. And I can actually see a lot of leaders practicing that. But
True.
it's a good trick. So thanks a lot for coming in and sharing your insights. I had a written goal and objective. Quickly, let's go through. Wanted to explore the intersection of leadership, regenerative thinking, and systemic transformation through the lens of you, who have actually worked with a lot of C-suite leaders and global teams. I think we achieved that. Also wanted to highlight your journey of weaving together emotional intelligence, people transformation, and business strategy into a framework that inspires future leaders. We achieved that. And actually, the aim was to showcase how inner growth and systemic practices together build cultures that are resilient, inclusive, and future ready. So I think 100% there. But I think I'm going to pull you back maybe in another 3 to 6 months' time with another topic.
Absolutely.
Questions?
Very good.
Yeah. More questions, I think, the next time. We just had, I think, 5 teams and maybe around 10, 12 questions now. But thanks a lot for your time. And anything you want to say, any advice for the MMLP team? What else we should be focusing on?
Oh, no, no, you guys are already doing a good job. One of the things, the best learning happens when you listen to others, no? Because then you get different perspectives. So that's what you're doing here. You're bringing people who have done a few things or have thoughts which could be different from the listeners. So you're already supporting with their learning journey. So great job. Very happy to be here. And again, very happy to speak with you after such a long time. I would love to come back and speak more whenever you would like.
Perfect. Thanks for your time today.
Absolutely. See you.
Perfect.